Hi, welcome back. And as always, thank you for continuing on this journey of exploration and discovery together. This has been another week of processing new information and new protocols. I confess, I experimented this week with taking my mask off outside, and it felt strange to me. So I found myself doing both. I'd keep it on, I'd take it off, I'd put it back on, I'd take it off. I think this kind of ambivalence and confusion will probably remain for a while as we each find our way back to some semblance of normalcy. As I was catching up on some reading this week, I came across a phrase that I thought was quite accurate and helpful. In the April 18th, I believe it's a Sunday edition of the New York Times, there was a section entitled Transformation. As introduction to its pandemic observations, the authors, Elizabeth Diaz and Audra Birch, wrote in part, certain moments in life have the power to shift our core sense of being. The coronavirus pandemic and all it has wrought is such a moment. Everyone has a personal before and after. It has been a collective near-death experience. That was the phrase that caught me. It has been a collective near-death experience for those lucky enough to survive. People have found themselves close to life's deepest questions, questions about how we live, how we suffer, and how we make meaning of our short time here on this earth. Who am I? What are we? Who are we becoming? How have we been transformed? Through it all, the world has not stopped. More mass shootings, the killing of George Floyd, the Capitol siege. For some, facing trauma feels too hard. Others have found unexpected resilience and courage, rage, or stillness. Transformation was forced on some, and for others, it was chosen. For many, the suffering of this past year has birthed an awakening. The questions of how we have changed will be with us in the months and years ahead. The process of reflection is just beginning. Where it takes us remains to be seen, but the clarity that comes with intense suffering often clouds as time moves on. We have a window now to look at our lives anew. They then go on to cite the words of those they interviewed as to how their attitudes, perceptions, reactions, and lives have changed over these past many months. I was struck by this formulation because it touches on so many of the things that we have noticed during our weekly time together. So let us pause for a moment and sit with some of these thoughts in mind. Let us first find our positions for meditation, for reflection. Let us plant our feet firmly and confidently upon the ground. Let us sit with attentiveness, but gently and with some ease. Let us begin the process of unclenching, perhaps our foreheads, our shoulders, our hands, and our laps. If a yawn arises, let it come. It just means that you are unclenching. And then let us take that first good, deep, slow breath. Relish it a bit. Enjoy it. Feel it go deep Hold on to it even. And then let it go. I closed my eyes automatically. I invite you to settle your eyes wherever it is most comfortable, closed or softly focused. And let us take another breath. As we breathe, we might consider the idea that we have been part of a collective near-death experience. What does that mean? For me personally, it went immediately to the idea, to the experience rather, of the first many weeks of this pandemic, even months, when so many of us felt that just by going out of our homes, we were risking our lives. Under any circumstances, it means trauma, relief, fear that we still can feel, and a grasping for what would make us feel safe. We will talk more about that later. What, if any, are the questions that are perhaps popping up in our minds? As we think that we have been, or as we consider that we have been part of a near-death experience, a collective near-death experience. Who am I now? Who are we? Who am I becoming? And for our consideration, how, if at all, have I been transformed? And once the questions arise, let us release them. Knowing that the answers are a journey also, I will be found in another journey going forward. Right now, this is where we are. In this moment. As we navigate this time, we have frequently turned to the wisdom of Jewish tradition for its wisdom and guidance. As we have noticed over the last few weeks, we are currently in a period of time known as counting the Omer. The custom of counting each day between the holidays of Passover and Shavuot is of biblical origin. This 7-week period is referred to as the Omer in reference to its original agricultural offerings. over generations, counting the Omer has been embraced as a period of inner work and spiritual preparation for receiving the Torah anew. Our mystics associated each week and each day of the week with a particular spiritual quality, or midah, a way to experience transcendence in our lives and express our desire to live in godly ways. This is the 6th week of the Omer, and as such is identified with the spiritual quality of Yesod, which literally means foundation. The 6th week of the Omer means we have one more week to go. And in fact, Shavuot is 2 weeks from today. Shavuot meaning weeks. It means it falls 7 weeks after the beginning of Pesach. Yesod, then, or foundation, calls us to align with the roots of our souls. In other words, Yesod, foundation, directs our attention to our foundations and our truths. As this is ultimately a mystical concept, it is open to interpretation and various associations, which are not always immediately understandable. One of the main ideas of Yesod is that in its foundationness, it manifests itself in the world as connection. The strength of our foundation is based upon the connections we have with others, with our faith, with God, or whatever force or power we may perceive as beyond us and yet of which we are a part. During this week of Yesod, then, we may acknowledge the depths of our experiences and offer gratitude for our community, our teachers, in whatever form they have touched our lives, and our companions with whom we walk, whoever and wherever they may be. We give thanks for our ancestors and all those who have helped us on the path of our life. In our awareness of Yesod, foundation, we remember that we stand strong and tall through our connections with each other. It may be helpful to think about Rabbi Amber Powers' approach to the quality of Yesod when she writes, "Source of all, help me feel rooted and strong. May I face any challenges this day grounded in the foundational truth that I am a holy and capable being." Another way to look at Yesod is offered by Rabbi Nancy Fuchs Kramer. My Pilates teacher tells me it is all about my core. The psalmist tells me, "You have made my mountain strong." Today, I focus on my spiritual foundation. And in parentheses, she writes, I also go to the gym. For our purposes, let us spend a moment thinking about and identifying the grounding forces in our lives, especially during this past year, when we were cut off from activities and interactions that normally give shape and substance to our everyday. What are the forces that brought you comfort? What made you feel secure? What calmed you? What gave you joy, if only briefly? What gave you hope? These are the foundations of our lives, and they can be anything. You might find that your home, a book, a TV show, a friend, a family member, a pet, a walk, a drive, a place, a view, a ritual, an observance, a service, a food, a meal, or a prayer. All of them may be foundations upon which you base your life, your very existence. As you think of the things that make you feel grounded, connected, rooted. You may want to think about whether the grounding forces you are identifying are internal grounding forces or external grounding forces, or perhaps they are one and the same. I would also love to suggest that you continue this exercise even after our meditation time is concluded. You might even take a minute or two to write them down. And then ask yourself whether the number of grounding forces you enumerated was long or short. Were you surprised by either? Were you surprised by the existence of more than one, if in fact there is more than one? I know that I tend to return to the same ones, but there are more than one. So let us breathe. Again, checking our positions, allowing that release in our bodies that then permit us to take that deep breath. That deep breath that makes us feel grounded right here, right now, in this moment and nowhere else. Because there is nowhere else that this breath is being taken. Once it is released, it is released forever. We cannot bring it back. We cannot put that particular breath back into our bodies. And so we go to the next one, because the next one is where we are living this moment, in this place, in this way. And we release. As we think about the grounding forces in our lives, the foundations upon which we depend for our sense of well-being, and that may have been disturbed in this past year, let us imagine as we are breathing, we are in the place or with the person or in connection with whatever it is that tends to ground our lives. And we might notice with that image in front of us how the rest of our body responds. Do we relax around it? Do we smile? Do we take comfort? Do we resist in some way? Whatever arises, let us observe. Let us take note. Let us not judge or criticize. These are our thoughts. And then let them go. However, as we breathe in and out, we might want to consider how we will glean strength from our grounding forces in this week to come. How might we glean strength from our grounding forces in this week to come. By way of conclusion, I share with you this poem by Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, based on the Torah and the episode when the Israelites, the chapters actually, when the Israelites bring all kinds of materials to build a temporary mishkan, a temporary dwelling, a temporary sanctuary in which they imagine God is present. How comforting that must have been for them as they carried it through the desert, carried it on their wanderings for 40 years. When Torah says, tell the Israelites to bring me gifts for cobbling together my patchwork residence, gold, silver, and copper, crimson and cerulean yarns, acacia wood, bolts of linen, tanned leather, and dolphin skins. Read instead, tell the Israelites to bring me wisdom, which takes as long to gestate as Moshe, as Moses, spent atop the mountain. I want you to bring me your wholeness, your completion, the quality of ripeness that accrues after 40 days of growth. Each of you is a Torah, a transcription of my holy name. Other names merely reference, sign pointing to signifier. But I and my name are one, which means you are too. You're part of me, always cherished, even when you wander in the wilderness, even when Sinai feels impossible to reach. May this week be a week of rediscovering foundations and foundational truths. And I look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.